It is Sunday, March 16th, and new polling has dropped showing since Trump's inauguration, Americans, for the first time in over 20 years, believe the country's headed in the right direction instead of the wrong direction. We're going to show you also brutal news for the Dem Party as they've fallen even further. Last month, they hit record low approval. Well, this month, it's even worse, even lower. Pretty soon, they won't even be a party. Wait till you see this. Also, we have an update on those rogue activist judges trying to stop Trump's deportation agenda. Bottom line, they are failing. We're going to show you. And Elon Musk's SpaceX capsule docking with the ISS, the International Space Station, rescuing America's 2 stranded astronauts. Amazing footage, and why mainstream media's radio silent about this. Disgraceful. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. So President Trump has been in office for 56 days. As of today, it's been 56 days. And in that time, since taking office, the closely watched right track, wrong track approval numbers have risen week after week after week. And now, Friday's polling for this past week, the newest polling, has them up again, now sitting at their highest mark in over 20 years. Just 3 months ago, at the end of November, only 27% of Americans said the country was headed in the right direction. Now that number's 44%. NBC's data analyst saying the last time it cracked 40%, you got to go back to 2012. The last time it actually hit 44% or higher, January of 2004. Watch.
First of all, the mood of the country, this really jumped out. We ask folks, is it on the right direction or the wrong direction? That 44%, you say right direction, that's up since November. And if that doesn't seem like a lot, the last time it cracked 40%, you got to go back to 2012. The last time it actually hit 44 or higher, January of 2004. So a lot of this is Republicans, but independents, that number is also up since the election on the direction of the country.
Likewise, Donald Trump's poll numbers, his approval rating, his job approval has risen again, unlike what you hear in corporate media, who cherry picks the questions that he polls poorly on. For example, all last week, they showed one question from their poll on the economy, which says that he's at 46%, down 10 points, but his overall approval numbers sky high, well above 50%. Look at this, all during his second term, all over 50%. Even CBS YouGov has him at 53% approval as of 3 weeks ago, despite the media's claims of slipping ratings. Meanwhile, today's polling shows the Democrat Party slipping away, withering away, reaching their lowest approval rating in the history of polling. This happened last week as well. They hit a record. Well, this week, it's even worse, even lower. Watch.
Good morning. Welcome Inside Politics Sunday. I'm Manu Raju. First up this morning, a brand new exclusive CNN poll that paints a brutal reality for Democrats as they struggle to mount a unified opposition to President Trump. Americans' favorable views of the Democratic Party's brand are at a record low, just 29%. That's compared to 36% for Republicans. It is the lowest ever recorded for Democrats in CNN polling going back more than 30 years. As you can see, the party's numbers dropping a staggering 20 points in just 4 years. The CNN SRSR's poll also found 57% of Democrats and Democratic-leaning voters are more interested in seeing their party leaders stop the GOP agenda, compared to 42% who are more interested in cutting bipartisan deals. It is a big shift from where the party stood at the start of Trump's first term in 2017. Now, this survey was taken before this week's tumultuous battle over funding the government, which resulted in one of the ugliest intra-party Democratic disputes in years, and left many in the party lobbying furious attacks at Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, who ultimately reversed course and let a GOP bill funding the government become law in order to avert a shutdown. Now a bitter round of finger-pointing is taking shape after Democrats failed to get a single concession from the GOP, despite having their first piece of leverage to fight back against Trump. Now the big question, where does a party in deepening turmoil and in open warfare go from here?
And a new Quinnipiac poll out this morning showing congressional Democrats even lower, lower than the 29% of party approval, which is awful, record low. Well, congressional Dems, even lower, 21% approval, the lowest number in the history of polling, 68% of the country disapproving of Democrats in Congress. If this isn't a wake-up call, I don't know what is. Watch.
I'm a big fan of the oldies, and when it comes to the feelings that Americans, voters at large, and Democrats have, I can't help but think of Chubby Checker. Why is that? Because the question is, how low can you go? Voters' views of Democrats in Congress, the lowest ever approval ratings on record per Quinnipiac University. Look at this. Approve 21% among all voters. Look at the disapprove level. Holy Toledo, 68% of all voters disapprove of how Democrats are doing in Congress. Now, you might think that is low, and this is the lowest number on your screen here, down at 21%. But I want to bring you over here to how Democratic voters feel, because this is truly unbelievable. Amongst their own party, how do Democratic representatives, senators, how are they viewed? Get this, the plurality disapprove at 49%. More Democrats disapprove of the job that their party is doing in Congress than approve. Get this, only 40% approve. These are truly horrific numbers. They are in the trash bin of history. That is how low these approval ratings are. When you can't even get plurality approval among your own party, you know you're doing something wrong.
And you'd think maybe, just maybe, they'd realize Americans don't want one of their two major political parties to be a group of rogue extremists. They're underwater with their position on Elon and Doge, fighting for more waste and fraud in the federal government. That's what Democrats are fighting for. More waste and fraud. Turns out nobody approves of that.
Our new NBC News poll, as you just saw, shows the Democratic Party at an all-time low approval rating. Why do you think Democrats are failing to connect with Americans at this critical moment of urgency, which you describe?
Well, it's what I just talked about. I mean, I think Americans want the Democratic Party to stand up and fight and to take risks. Listen, I understand that had we gone into a shutdown, even for a handful of days, it would have been difficult. But it would have sent a message that the Democratic Party is not going to be bullied by Donald Trump. We are not going to let them write spending bills unilaterally that cut programs for people we care about, that give the president new and extraordinary power. I think Democrats in this country, but I think the broad middle of the public as well, want to see our party fighting in exceptional ways. That is the conversation that has to happen inside of the Democratic Party, inside our caucus. And if we don't get that right, if we continue to work with Republicans, if we continue to hand Donald Trump more power, we are going to lose our democracy.
Yet they double down, accusing Trump and Elon of stealing, saying what Doge is doing is stealing. How is saving American tax dollars, returning it to the Treasury, stealing? They really think that they can gaslight Americans about this. How is returning money to the Treasury stealing? In fact, it's the complete opposite. The more the Treasury saves literally equates to a higher savings rate per U.S. resident. David Sachs summed it up perfectly this weekend. Listen to his theory about why Dems are so angry about Elon and Doge. I think he's spot on. Watch.
Well, Laura, I was at the State of the Union and I was up in the balcony. I was looking down at the Democrats holding up these silly little signs. And the sign that I saw the most was one that said, Musk steals. And I really thought about that, which is, how is Elon stealing? He's returning money to the Treasury. And then it hit me. They actually have come to believe that this taxpayer money is theirs. And by returning it to the Treasury, Elon is stealing from them. That's my best explanation of why they're in such a hysterical state about this. But of course, Elon isn't stealing anything. He is making sure that the federal government is taking good care of our money and that we're not wasting it. It's not going to corruption or fraud. And I think that just has the swamp in an absolute tizzy, because he, along with the president and at the president's direction, they are draining the swamp.
In another story, the Trump administration has sent the first 250 plus illegal gang members to El Salvador. These were migrant gang members operating on U.S. soil, mostly Tren de Aragua, some MS-13. They've been caught, captured, and now deported to El Salvador to be held in their notorious mega prison. This flight that landed this morning included 238 members of the Venezuelan prison gang Tren de Aragua, the worst of the worst. Also, 23 members of MS-13. El Salvador's president releasing this footage from the tarmac this morning showing dozens of heavily armed Salvadorian commandos meeting the plane, transferring the prisoners, chaining them, forcibly moving them. They'll be housed in the notorious terror confinement center. These are the worst of the worst. We can't even talk about what they've done on YouTube. We're not allowed. They'll take the video down. This is one of the most brutal gangs anywhere on the planet who was allowed to operate freely for the last 4 years on American soil. How did they end up in the U.S.? They're a Venezuelan prison gang. 20 years ago, operating solely in Venezuela's prison system. Now somehow they're global with a major U.S. presence. I'll tell you how, because over the last 4 years, more than 10 plus million illegals were allowed to just walk into the country. And like Trump said many, many times, a lot of them were from Venezuela's prison system. Well, not anymore. Trump's sealed the border, brought illegal crossings to their lowest level ever. That's right, ever. In recorded history, in polling history or tracking history, since CBP began tracking illegal crossings, only 3,000 illegal crossings for the entire month of February. Yet if it were up to Democrats, they're fighting to reverse this. They're even fighting Trump about stopping deportation of Tren de Aragua members. Like what? This is who this party is now. Watch.
To deport undocumented Venezuelans that the administration say are dangerous individuals with ties to the gang Tren de Aragua. That gang is obviously associated with a lot of crime, human trafficking, drug dealing, theft, shootings, including in your state of Texas, right outside of your congressional district. Do you agree with this? And if not, what's your issue with the U.S. using any tool at its disposal to remove undocumented, violent people from this country?
Well, my argument is that we already have tools that are available to remove undocumented violent people from our country. And so the idea that you want to go into a zombie law, this is kind of like what we saw in Arizona when they decided to revive a zombie law around abortion. It is the fact that we can't trust this administration to actually use a scalpel, but instead they love to use a butcher knife on things. And so giving them this wide latitude to just kind of go across and just claim that anybody is anything is wrong. And so we do have courts, we do have processes, we do have laws, and we should just go ahead and use those. There's a reason that nobody else has decided to go back into Adam's times in order to try to find ways to make sure that we can keep our country safe.
In response to this, a federal judge, U.S. District Judge James Boasberg, quickly ordered the Trump administration to halt all removals after the commander-in-chief signed off on a presidential action invoking the 1798 law aimed at targeting Venezuelan prison gang Tren de Aragua. The judge, located in the belly of the beast, by the way, Washington, D.C., and wrote in his ruling, any plane containing these folks that is going to take off or is in the air needs to be returned to the United States however that is accomplished. Make sure it's complied with immediately. That just happened. These activist judges, out of control. They did the same thing with Trump's CEO to halt USAID contracts when Trump ordered a stoppage of all payment on foreign aid. Trump orders it, a left-wing federal judge then rules to block the order, delaying everything Trump tries to do. Even though it's all within his constitutional executive authority, the USAID foreign aid block, for example, 3 weeks went by before the Supreme Court on Friday with Chief Justice John Roberts overturning the lower court order, blocking it, saying no to the lower court. You're wrong. Trump has the complete authority to halt all foreign aid. That just happened on Friday. The same thing is going to happen with these deportation flights. It's a stall tactic. These extremist left-wing law firms file the lawsuits, and their friends on the bench make the rulings to tie Trump up in court for as long as possible. That's what's happening. That's what they're doing. In another story, Elon Musk's SpaceX Dragon has successfully docked with the ISS, the International Space Station, rescuing our stranded American astronauts. The astronauts were left there for more than 8 months because the Biden administration refused to ask Elon Musk for help. God bless Elon Musk. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.